bibliographic relationships, bibliographic families, how these relationships are impacting user searching, bibliographic control, or if they're successfully represented using RDA. So I see a lot more research coming in that area. I'd like to see a lot more research. I also want to see catalogers' tasks to support functionality. There's a lot of discussion focused on user tasks in Ferber. They have their own tasks. Why can't we have our very formalization of catalogers' tasks? And these are just some ideas that I've been playing around with. It's not complete. I'm in the process of trying to write a textbook for RDA. Been trying to do that for a while now. It's not easy. But I started thinking about it in terms of sort of taking something like Ferber or FRAD or FRSAD, and how, if they talk about a user's task, what's sort of the flip side or the opposite of that. So, we describe, we identify, interpret, translate resource attributes to enable identifying or selecting, and this is often like the technical read of an information resource. We analyze, we contextualize the information content. We validate and govern access points. We classify, categorize the content to support collocation and to present simple knowledge organization systems. We represent and encode both the information resource and then resource attributes to support, again, collocation, navigation. So I think it would be interesting to kind of move forward on this. And again, it's just some preliminary thoughts I've had, but I think it's a valid way to go forward, especially with RDA. Lastly, on Friday this week, October 1st, the U.S. national testing of RDA starts. They did a sort of pre-selection of official participants in that, and several of library schools are participating as sort of a subgroup of testers, and at UNT we're participating as a part of the cohort of library schools. We've recruited other faculty, students, and librarians to participate. I think it's a fitting way to round out the year of cataloging research. However, the tremendous amount of data that will be generated will take some time to analyze. So I think that perhaps we should call it the decade of cataloging research. Just a suggestion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miksa, for your talk. It's very interesting about the implications of RDA on the practice and new files, new teams that we have to approach as researchers. Agradecemos a la doctora Miksa pues esta plática que nos ha dado, la cual nos muestra una panorámica acerca de este asunto de las RDA, las implicaciones que van a tener en la práctica de catalogación, nuevos campos que se abren para la investigación. Es todo un panorama el cual se nos ha mostrado. Y celebro mucho y comparto la idea de que el catálogo va a seguir existiendo, aun cuando tenga otra forma, otras características que la tecnología pues nos va a hacerlo que se modifique. Abrimos la sesión para comentarios y preguntas. We are going to open the session of comments and questions. Si alguien tiene un comentario, alguna pregunta.
I think I scared him.
Hola, buenos días, Ruiz. Yo comparto la idea de que el registro catalográfico es un comentario, el registro catalográfico va a cambiar radicalmente, no va a ser ya más como lo conocemos ahora, y eso no implica la desaparición del catálogo al público. creo que va a desagregarse. Si seguimos el modelo de entidad-relación, tendrá que ser así.
It's a comment. She shared the idea that the bibliographic record will be continued for many times, but in a different context.
Yes, yeah. A word, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? ¿Algún otro comentario? Sí.
Metadata description.
Similarities between what we've traditionally done and sort of the new metadata. Well, I think we've been doing metadata for a long time. So I had some disagreements when, especially with my colleague, Bill Moen, we have lots of terrific arguments where he says metadata is different than what cataloging is. I really don't see a difference. What is different is the encoding schemes. You know, it's not just MARC. MARC is a, content designation encoding schema. So, in some ways I always argue, well, we've been doing that. Why aren't you paying attention to what we're doing? You could learn some things from us, from what we've been doing for a long time. Catalogers, however, I think don't voice themselves enough on that issue. But I really think there's not a whole lot of difference until you get to the encoding standard itself, because there's some fundamental things that are the same as far as description of what you're putting in and what you're creating the metadata for. Did that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yes, a language problem. What I've noticed is if, say, a new institution or a group of people come up with a metadata system, and Dublin Core, for example, started out as 13 elements and now it's 15 elements. But as you see, it was 1996, I think, is when it first started, and it was going to simplify everything. That was back when Lisa and I were talking about this earlier, about we were going to catalog the internet because websites were new and we had to catalog them. That was our first instinct. And MARC, way too complicated, cataloging. So let's take something like Dublin Core, but as I've seen it in the time since, it's gotten a lot more complex, and there's a lot more inputs, rules or standards to go with it. I think that's a common thing. We're dealing with very complex information resources and how we're trying to provide access to them, and I don't know how you can simplify it down too much. And I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but it's my thoughts on it. So it's a very big issue. You can't simplify too much.
Bueno, trataré de hacer una síntesis. ¿Cuál es su opinión entre la catalogación tradicional y los metadatos? Ella no ve una gran diferencia, no hay una separación total entre los que es catalogación y tradicional. Quizá el punto clave está en la manera, y en los estándares que se usan para codificar esta información, estándares como MARC. Los principios de catalogación, los principios en los que se basan los esquemas de metadatos, pues son similares. ¿Alguna otra pregunta, algún otro comentario? Ariel. ¿El micrófono? Ah, ya lo tienes.
Doc. Bueno, yeah. What is your opinion about the cataloging process, the change in the United States?
The
Accept the change on RDA or not accept the cataloger, the change on cataloging process?
It's going to make a big change. In fact, the one comment I hear often from seasoned or catalogers who've been doing this for 30 years or 35 years is, I'm retiring. I don't want to do RDA. The same thing happened when AACR2 came out. You saw a lot of people retired because they don't want to learn it. It's going to change. It has to change if it wants to survive the whole cataloging process. Now there's some fundamentals. We can still describe an item, you know, with certain characteristics, title, physical description, all that. But it's how we make relationships or how we provide access between things. Catalogers have to think differently. They have to approach it differently. That's why I say they need to think about it as from a database approach. I think that too goes back to the question earlier is coming up with these sort of encoding standards. It's a lot of that is coming out of computer science or information science. You know, then you have to talk about the debate between library science, information science. Is there a difference? But I think that it will go through a change. At least I want to make them change. I'm trying to write a new textbook. I'm trying to write one of the first textbooks on RDA. But I quickly realized I have to put both AACR2 and RDA because you have to have that transition period. My goal with my students is to, you know, sort of put out there in the field these new catalogers that can help them make the transition. So.
Bien, como todo cambio, pues es cuestionado. Lo mismo pasó cuando se adaptaron las RCA2. Hubo opiniones a favor, opiniones en contra. Algunas de las opiniones que prevalecían y que prevalecen es, bueno, yo ya no quiero saber absolutamente nada de eso. Yo ya me jubilaré, ya me voy a retirar y hay que se hagan cargo otros. Pero el cambio está, ¿sí? Y hay que enfrentarlo. Y piensa que la gente joven pues va a hacer frente a ese gran reto de adaptación del nuevo código de catalogación. Ella considera que habría que partir de la transición basándonos en RCA a RDA, de lo conocido a algo nuevo. Sí.
Son tres preguntas rápidas. Más o menos, ¿cuántas instituciones están involucradas en este nuevo reto? ¿Cuánto tiempo se piensa se llevará entre emigrar de las RCA2 a las RDA? Y sobre todo, ¿cuál va a ser el procedimiento para uniformar todo el material que ya estaba procesado con anterioridad? ¿O cómo se piensa enfrentar esta situación, toda vez que nosotros aquí en México hemos enfrentado en las diferentes instituciones la problemática de transferir de un programa de automatización a otro, y se han tenido experiencias variadas, ¿no? Entonces, ¿cómo es que ellos lo enfrentan?
Three questions.